Welcome back, everyone, to Rising Warriors, Rachael Kulei. I am a member of the Northwest Band Shoshone Nation from Washakie, Utah. And today I have my beautiful sister, friend over here, educator, Dr. Corcoran. And I'm excited to have her here. She actually, we've been friends and things and passings and have known each other for many, many years. And also, you know, my mother, Rochelle Nielsen, too.
Yeah.
And
your sister.
and my sister Jacqueline, and then you knew my grandmother too, Darlene. And so we've kind of known each other for a while. But it was actually Eric that brought you up and was like, you need to put her on your podcast. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I've been thinking about her too, but he's the one that kind of like ignited it even more. And I was like, okay, I got to reach out to her. Like, she's like, this is perfect. We've got educators on here, and you're doing all these amazing things and whatnot. And so I just wanted to bring you on and, you know, bring some enlightenment to the Indigenous studies that you do and law and all these amazing things. So I'm going to have you go ahead and introduce yourself and where you come from, your people, and take it away.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm just honored. So my name is Carma Corcoran. I am a member of the Chippewa-Cree Nation. My great-great-grandfather is Chief Big Bear. My great-grandfather is Chief Little Bear, and Open Eyes Little Bear is my grandmother. And, you know, my ancestors are with me every day and guiding me, and as we all know as Native people, compelling me. And, you know, like many Native people, I, you know, kind of came to education late. I started college right out of high school, but, you know, there were other things going on in my life, and I left college, and I had always wanted to go back. And, you know, I fell in love with a man and got married and had a child, and I could have gone back. But in my case, I really wanted to be present for my child. But when I was 40, I decided to go back to school as a gift to myself. And so I ended up going back and completing my bachelor's. And then I did my master's. I got my master's when I was 50. And,
and then we say is like, you're never too old to get your bachelor's and go back to school.
You're never too old. And then when I was 60, I got my PhD. And so it was a lifelong dream, which I wasn't sure. It was really an unspoken dream. I didn't talk to anybody about it. But it was just something that I just wanted to do. So I think what has been so good is that because I was a little bit older, I knew always where I was going. There wasn't some big question about what I wanted to study. I wanted to be involved in Native studies, to learn more about, you know, the history of this country, my own people. And so it was just through all of my degrees, I, you know, took as many classes as would feed into what I hope to be my body of work. And so when I got to my PhD, I was so fortunate, and I encourage everybody who is a Native student to get this book. I bought a book called Research is Ceremony. And it's by a Cree person named Sean Wilson. It's a First Nations person. And it really set a template for me of how I wanted to do my research. And so I reached out to my advisor who, and I wish I could do a Georgia boy accent, because he was lovely. I called him up and I'm like, Dr. Crow, this is what I'm really wanting. And he's just like, we're going to make this happen for you. Because as you can imagine, even at a private liberal arts PhD program, nobody else was doing an Indigenous research paradigm. And it wasn't like every professor I had was jumping up and down for joy about it.
Right.
But he was an advocate for me. And so I did all of my PhD dissertation using an Indigenous research paradigm. Wow. Now, I was also really fortunate, and I encourage all students, and I feel so fortunate for some students. I am that person that you've got to find a connection in academia. You've got to find somebody that supports you, that guides you, that gives you critical advice where needed. Mm-hmm. I've had to tell students, you really need to succinct that up. And so I met this professor. I was fortunate enough to have him in a class, and his name was F. David Pete. Why you two? They're the dog and my husband are going off for their jaunt. And F. David Pete was a incredible person. He was a theoretical physicist, and he spent a lot of time with the Blackfeet people. And so he wrote this great book called Blackfeet Physics, which of course really is a lot about, Indigenous knowledge and the way that we see the world. And he was so respectful. He also spent quite a bit of time with some distant elders of mine. And so when I went to him and said, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to study, he was fabulous. And then the other thing that happened was I read a book by an author named Luana Ross. She is Kootenai Salish, and she has written the only book about my subject, which happens to be the incarceration of Native women. And so I reached out to her, I reached out to everybody I knew and said, do you know Luana Ross? And, and I'm like, would you introduce me to Luana Ross? And so I finally got somebody to say, okay, I'll connect you via email. She wasn't able to be on my committee because of her time commitment. She just recently retired from teaching at University of Washington, but she gave me such good advice, and she would send me articles, or you need to talk to this person. And her body of work is key to my getting to do my body of work. But her advice, her support, that connection. And so for students, it doesn't matter if you're in community college or a university, find your people. Find those people that you can trust with your dream, that are not going to tell you, oh, you can't do it. Nobody does that. Or that won't be accepted in academia. You've got to have those people that say, yeah, this is going to be hard, but I'm here to support you and help you find connection. I honestly, and I really hate to say this on air, but part of that compelling is I know how fortunate I am to have the level of degrees that I have earned. And therefore I'm compelled to give back. So if a Native student comes to me, and I get this from other people who send them to me and say, would you read this dissertation? Or would you give some feedback? I'm going to do it. Because, people supported me. And our ancestors compel us to acknowledge the privilege that we have. And so I do serve on committees. I've served on a number of master's thesis, dissertation committees. And I'm honest, about this area needs a little bit of work, or you might look up this person, or what are you trying to say here? Because academia as a whole is not the kindest place.
Right.
I think another really important thing to know is that just a Native student being in academia makes a difference. I remember when I got my master's and I was doing an article, and I had gone to the library and was looking up statistics. And my getting a master's made a difference in the statistics. My getting a PhD made a difference. And it still makes me cry, because just one person ups our statistics. And as awful as academia is, those things are important. It matters in teaching. I was in my master's before I had a Native professor, and I got a master's in public administration from Portland State. And at that time they had a tribal track. And while I was not interested in doing professionally tribal governance, I took every class that I could as my electives. And then my poor advisors, you have to get your advisor. So in my undergrad, and I should send this to Jeff Sweeney. So Jeff Sweeney was my undergrad advisor, and I would call him up and I would say, Jeff. And he'd say, oh, good God, what do you want? And I say, oh, Jeff, you don't want me to take that class. Carma, it's a core class. No, but what do you want to do? And so then he'd send me the paperwork. So every quarter we'd have this chat. And then my last quarter, he'd had a heart attack. And then he went around telling people it was me. And so, of course I knew it was joking. Yeah. So my last quarter, I was trying to get a hold of the internship coordinator, who was absent, worthless, and you pay $2,000 because you have to take this thing. So finally I thought, I'll call, his office. There has to be somebody filling in over there for him. So I call, and he answered the phone. And I'm like, oh my God, Jeff. And he goes, it had to be you. He said, my first phone call back, it's you. I'm like, I'll hang up. I swear to God, I'll hang up. He's like, okay, Carma. He goes, but you want something. I said, Jeff. And he's like, just do whatever you want. Send the paper over. I'm like, okay. Well, then when I got to my master's, oh my gosh, Jack Corbett, I would call him and he'd say, well, come in, we'll meet. And I'm like, okay, if you want to waste your time. And so I'd come in, and of course he would give in. And then after a while it'd be like, just email me, and after a while it'd be, just send the form over, Carma. And so I kind of wrote my own master's because I'd be like, Jack, why should I do an internship when I am supervising 12 of your interns? Does that not seem foolish to you? And like, whatever you want, Carma. So what that translated to was I got to do a lot of independent study for these credits, which then I could concentrate on what I was interested in and not take all the rattletrap stuff that I wasn't interested in. Unfortunately for my statistics teacher, I still had to do two terms. He was so gracious, but he wanted me to care about it, and I told him, I said, look, I'm just here to pass. I don't care. I will hire someone to do my statistics if I ever need to. I'm not a complete nut. I'll know if they're off. But he was so kind to me. So part of my message is you're in control of your education. And while, yes, there's some hoops you need to jump through, you don't have to jump through every hoop. And if you've got your support that's saying, look, Dr. Corcoran's really suggesting that this would be advisable for this student to take, or this placement, would just really serve what the student wants to do. It's really helpful. Certainly too, and I recognize the privilege of being a professor at a college. I'm an adjunct. I love it. I'm hoping to maybe end my career as just a professor, not all my other jobs. And here again, and I say this without ego, having a PhD makes a difference. For a program to say, we have 3 PhDs that are Indigenous. When you're looking for money, you're looking for support, it matters. So it frustrates me when I hear people say, well, getting letters after your name is just, it doesn't even mean anything. And it's like, yeah, it does.
It does.
It means that, you were up for the rigors of what you wanted to do. And so once again, so called on. And, I teach my classes using the model of general action theory, which is F. David Pete. I'm very involved in making sure my classes are inclusive, that everybody has a place. Lot of first generation students, but also that if you're not Native, you still have a place. You are not shunned or thought less of. Also, just such respect for every Native experience. We don't all come from the res. We're not all urban. Not everybody grew up. I didn't get to grow up at the knees of my aunties with my grandmother's hands on mine. And I'm so fortunate that I was able to find deeper connection, as an older adult, starting in my 30s. And so in my courses, there is no you're not Indian enough crap. It's just not going to fly. And, if it requires one of those emails where Dr. Corcoran says, I need a moment of your time, darling, that will happen. Creator will take care of things. And I know there's this huge movement out now about the pretend Indians or pretendians or however they say. And while I too don't appreciate co-opting of our culture, people benefiting from claiming that they are Native when they're not, just because you might not be enrolled or you didn't grow up in community doesn't mean you're not Indian. And this calling out within is just another form of lateral oppression. And I just think that we can go about it in a better way. Plus, it's not my way of being in the world. It's not general action theory. And certainly I've called people up. There was this ad on Facebook about this craft shop over in Oregon City where and they were going to make dream catchers.
Oh, okay.
And they're da-da-da. No, I thought about it. And so I posted, does anybody know about this? And people were just vicious. I mean, awful, like, burn it down. And I'm like, I was just inquiring. So I actually messaged the lady. We talked on the phone. I explained to her why, that was offensive. And she took it down. She took it down. And so my message to these people was, all it took was a message and a phone call. It didn't have to erupt in this anger and this emotional violence toward her. Now, certainly other people are going to tell us where we can get off. They're going to do what they're going to do. But once again, Creator will take care of it. All the fake crap that's sold, I personally don't have enough time to go on every Facebook ad and say, thanks for stealing our art, but I appreciate people who do this, but, I'm much more an advocate for where you can do it in a positive way and leaving it up to the artist. Working in a law school, the Native concept of intellectual property has only really been developing for the last 10 years because of that concept of owning something and the fact that people who are artists like you are, your art is gifted to you from a higher place. And so it's, too bad that in this day and age that Native artists should probably copyright their art. But it doesn't come to us through our teachings. And each artist has to decide, what is right for them, not other people telling them what's right.
Right.
The other thing I do want to talk about too is law school. This will not come as a surprise to people, but I had often thought about being an attorney when I was young, or a teacher, one or the other. And then, oh my gosh, I forgot to send this link to my brother Jay. But so what, they make you take those aptitude tests. And so it was like 7th grade, and they made us all take this aptitude test in the cafeteria. And you had to take little things and put them on a little thing and then put them in a little thing. And I don't know what all was going on. Well, I dropped my little things and they went all over the floor. And then you had to answer questions. And so mine came back as an actual report. Somebody like, Brookings Institute does these things. It said I should either be an attorney or a comedian.
Oh.
And, my parents were quite worried that I would choose comedian.
The comedian.
But I figured I could do both.
It's a side job.
Yeah, exactly. And so, because I didn't go back to school until I was older, I decided not to go to law school. For two reasons. One, it's a lot harder to find a job as an older person, much less an older woman in this field, when you can hire, some 1L right out of law school that, isn't carrying the kind of debt that I might be carrying. But I was fortunate, and honestly, because of my master's, somebody referred me to Lewis and Clark Law School. And I told them, they're never going to hire me. I don't have a JD. And they said, just apply. And so I applied, and my background in program administration served me well. I went and interviewed, and interviewed with the iconic Bob Miller.
Ah.
And he and I hit it off right away. And he said, yeah, I can work with her. You've got the job. And then it goes, oops, I don't think I was supposed to say that. But I did get the job. And, Bob's office was across the hall from mine. And we became friends. And he was such a supporter of me, and still friends today. He teaches in the summer program for me. Okay. Every year I email him like, do you want to teach this summer? And every year he says, well, I don't want to work that hard and I want an office for the summer. I'm like, I'll see what I can do for you. But once again, finding those colleagues, and at a private, expensive law school like Lewis and Clark, you're not going to find the number of Native law students that you're going to find at, University of New Mexico or, Sandra Day O'Connor or, where Bob teaches. And so just me being there makes a difference. Mm-hmm. I'm the Native American Law Student Advisor. I spend a lot of time with them in person during the regular year, but during this COVID time, lots of phone calls, lots of Zoom meetings. And once again, they don't have to explain anything to me. I understand what they're going through. And it's really important to have those people. And I would really like to see more Native people in education. Mm-hmm. There's too many universities in this country where non-Native people are still teaching Native American history. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying you can't, that just because you're not Native, you can't teach history well. But there's a level of understanding that a Native person brings because of their own experience, family, the experience of their people, that it's not possible for a non-Native. Plus, we need them there to be supporting students. I love the Native Center at Portland State. Mm-hmm. And I'm a little quirky, and I don't allow laptops in my classroom unless there's a demonstrated need. If somebody needs that to take notes, I completely understand. All they have to do is tell me. I have some students that maybe need to record the class and the lecture. Completely understand that. But other than that, when my class starts, the laptops do not go up. Because it's a dialogue class. And I notice at the beginning of a quarter, they'll all be just waiting outside my room. Then they'll go in and they'll just all be waiting there. And I come in. By the end of the quarter, before class, they're talking to each other in small groups. They're, conversing. We get into the classroom, they're talking to each other. Many of them become friends within the Indigenous Nation Studies Program or on Facebook. Oh my gosh, I have so many students on Facebook. It's like, oh my gosh, I have my own page just for them. But the difference is that setting of community and the acknowledging of the place that we're at, and that it gives you a different feeling than another hall or another classroom does. And so place is so important. And, I always tell, all the students, come here to study. There's computers, you can sit by the fireplace and read. Come here and have your lunch, because people need a spot where they feel less anxious, a little bit like home. Of course, you as an artist, the artwork, it's a different feeling when you walk in that place. And I'm so fortunate that the staff at the center has seen me for years because I did my master's there, and I would go in on Saturdays. They were still open on the weekends, but Fridays too. And I would be there all day writing. I would bring them treats because they think, oh my God, that old woman's here again. And the desk people have always been so kind to me. And Robert Franklin at the center is so sweet. And he goes, when you walk in, it brings us all joy. And, people need that connection as opposed to, I honestly, and I'm sorry, Lewis and Clark, people, if any of you are listening to this, but this is true. I have a couple professors who have never spoken to me in 14 years of being at Lewis and Clark. And I realize some of it has to do with perhaps social anxiety, things like that. But I've had some awkward elevator rides. And one guy I used to torment and say hi to him anyway. I quit doing that. I'm trying to be a nicer person in life. And here's the other thing that's the truth. When I got my PhD, I was definitely treated differently because I hold a higher degree than a JD. And while that's great, I'm still the same person. I still have the same intellect. I still have the same body of work. And so, the strata of academia is really rigid. And that's I really wanted to have this conversation with you, is that Native professors and advisors understand that Native students are going to institutions that were never designed for them. And, there's some great people that are working hard about that. And, I'm fortunate to be, an adjunct in the Indigenous Nation Studies Program. I'm on a special group. I forget what it's called, and I forget. I have to keep track of these things.
It's special. It's just a special
put on
group.
my CV. I was chosen for this group about really addressing academia in the way that we are designing our classes, working with students, and all of us, most of us, I think, are ethnic minorities. I, am so fortunate to be a fellow, a public scholar, and my work is about helping to provide a space for Native Indigenous students to have a voice within an institution. So, you could take something big like the mascot issue. If Portland State, well, Lewis and Clark is the pioneers, okay?
Yeah, right.
I will never be known as a pyro.
No.
Pyro, maybe. I'm willing to set
pyro.
But I'm not a pyro. I will never be a pyro. And so students need to be able to have a pathway within an institution, other than just a small group that says, look, this, I need this to be different, or I need you to think about this. And, even one thing is the way syllabuses are written. It's difficult to write a syllabus in a way that everybody can participate, because once again, we all learn differently. We participate differently. I never cold call, but I say, I cold warn me.
Hey.
So question, I'll say, okay, this is the question I'm going to ask for today. I'm going to ask each of you, and we're going to go around the room. And if the first person says, will you come back to me? Of course, I'm going to come back to them. And, if somebody says, like, I've certainly had students who it's triggering, let's face it, the real history of this country is triggering.
Right.
If they say this is too hard for me because of what my family's been through, that's great. But all of these different ways for people to participate, where they don't feel like they're have to be the person with their hand up all the time, or
Right.
And so how we evaluate students, and how we give them platforms. For example, one of my favorite, and I'm sorry former students are hearing this, but me, I have my favorites.
Yeah.
There was this one group that the book that they read is there. And so they have like a small book club.
Okay.
And so I divide them up, and I always tell them it's like a book club without the wine or the shot of gray board. Bring Twinkies if you want, but and then they present and they talk about the reading, what it meant to them, however they want to do it. Well, one of them set up a whole little like reading booth, like if it was you and I together in person, and they got up and said their piece, and then maybe the interviewer asked them a question. It was just really fun, and it took it took a lot of I think the anxiety away from them about just standing up and saying, I read this. And so, I've had people do dance before. I mean, however they want to do it,
Love it.
But if you're the person who stands up and says, da, 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 you get just as many points.
Right.
And so I think that helps to ease some of their anxieties, because, it's not easy to be, up before 25 people, sharing something. And especially because you're always going to have overachievers,
Right.
My daughter used to call me teacher's pet. Because today, even they send me letters in the mail and stuff. She's like, teacher's pet. And then when she was in high school, she would say to her friend, so Sarah, how do you spell nerd? And Sarah would go, well, N-E-R-D. And she'd say, I spell mine C-A-R-M-A. But she's terribly proud of me. But, and I am helping to, school her son for obvious reasons. She does recognize my talents. Another funny story is when I became a doctor, I told everybody, okay, you'll be calling me Dr. Corcoran. I earned this the hard way.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm not going to call you that. Oh, really? Oh, okay. And so then I told her, there's this bank. It's called the Bank of Mom. It just got a name change. It's now the Bank of Dr. Mom. Remember
Dr. Mom.
Remember that. You wish to withdraw. She's like, got it. So, it's but once again, I think that what we do makes such a difference. My grandson, who is 18 and has some markers on the spectrum, but has done so well, has such confidence about education. He wants to be a writer. He, the election, he was taking civics. We had some really great conversations because he lives in very much of a little red fishing town over in the Washington coast.
Okay.
So yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
And his parents didn't go to college. His grandparents didn't go to college. And except for me. And so he is able to see that yeah, it can be done, and it's a good thing to strive for, and there's no reason that, because he may have some challenges, that he can't get a college degree. And I've always told him, if there's something else you want to do, you know, trade school, whatever, I'm here to support you as long as you make a living. Yeah.
Right.
I can't afford you too. That's cool. And so, it does make a difference having people who are there to support, to encourage, and also even cry with you. Because, I'm not going to tell people, oh, it's easy, you're just not doing it right. It's more like, man, it is a bitch. It is hard. My PhD almost killed me, and it was kind of funny because, well, it wasn't funny, but I had a little silent heart attack during my PhD.
Oh.
Yeah, it was rough. It was pretty scary. And I won't say the word since we're live, but so my husband was going out one evening and he was very worried about me, and he had to go out, and he's like, "Are you going to be okay?" I'm like, "I'm okay. I'm fine." And he says, "You're not going to die on me, are you?"
Oh, no.
Said, "Not until I get this blank PhD. He's like, "Oh my God."
Stubborn Native
That's
women.
what you're hanging on for. I go, hell yeah. It's going to say it on my stone. And it's like, oh, whatever motivates you. But it was a motivator. I was like, man, I'm so close. I was, writing my dissertation, and I was like, that would really make me mad.
Right? You're like, I'm going to come back and chase my body down.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Who is responsible for this? So,
right.
But, I think the other thing too is to really allow yourself to be open to what you want to do. I mean, some of us, I'm really fortunate. I've always really known myself really well and what I wanted to do as far as education is concerned. But if you don't know, go take those core courses, see who you meet, professors that I remember having a professor over at Oregon College of Education. That shows how old I am. This is now Western Oregon University. That was so good. And he was just a wonderful man. And I loved his teaching style. He was so good with students. I learned so much that, I definitely have used him as a model. He also just really, was receptive to meeting with me because it was cultural anthropology. And so we had some great talks. They say, yeah, this is a little hard for me. And he completely understood, why I might have a different view of Lewis and Clark than the rest of the students in class. And so finding those type of people along the way, I think when students find out, oh my gosh, environmental law, environmental science, food sovereignty, let's face it, people like, Judy Blue Horse Skelton have helped people with just by being her and what she teaches, determining this is my passion, this is my heart. And so I always tell people it's okay if you don't know. A lot of students come to law school, they have no idea what kind of practice they want to end up doing. But they take these courses, they hear these cases, and they think, yeah, all those tax law people, what's up with that? And a professor I just admire so much, who's like the author of Tax Law, great sense of humor. I love his blog, Jack Podansky. But I always wanted to ask Jack, he happens to be from Jersey. Was it because you're from Jersey, Jack? I need to. I'll post that on his Facebook sometime because he's such a good professor. But I can't I mean, why tax law?
Right.
And I'll say this, I mean, he is the tax law guy, and so maybe he knew that was his calling, but I'm just like, that's just something that would never call to me.
Right. You're like, tax what?
Exactly. And my only thing is, why do we have to pay him?
Right, exactly.
I can pay mine,
Like, why do
but
we have to
it's
pay
like,
taxes?
and his new book came out, and I'm like, I will not be reading the new tax book. I will be going to a tax professional should I need one. So, I have a question to ask you.
Yes.
So obviously, I actually met your mom
Uh-huh.
more deeply because of Portland State.
Right.
And she was teaching an art class there. And a couple people that I know were displaying. And so one was Kaila Farrell Smith, and I think Natalie Ball, maybe. And so I went over to see theirs and got to talk with your mom more. And then we both had some experience with wisdom of the elders. And so I got to know more through that. And so, how long has she been a professor?
Oh, she kind of went through the same thing with you, like you did, so my sister and I were 10 years apart. And so I think when I was about 18, 19, my sister was about 8 or 9. That sounds about right. Okay, so that's around the time my mom went back to school herself, because she actually went to school for nursing before she had me. And then she would actually take me to school with her to her nursing classes. And sent me there in my car seat, and I would just be quiet and listen. But she went back to school, and she was going to go into art therapy. And then everything kind of shifted and changed. And I want to say it had to have been around 2011 is when she finally graduated with her master's, and then went into teaching 2012, around that time at PSU. Wonderful. And so then now she's at Portland Community College teaching art. But then she just got approved for art history class.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so now she's going to start, she's starting to teach her history class with the Indigenous perspective and things like that. And so she's been working hard on trying to get them to let her do this program and coming up with the program in itself.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm excited for that. I get to be her little assistant on some of those things and whatnot, and come in and help teach.
Which campus?
Sylvania campus.
Perfect.
Yeah, so down by Tigard, right?
Yeah, near Lewis and Clark. Yeah.
So that's what she's doing.
I'm so happy to hear that.
It's amazing.
Art history in my undergrad, and I always tell students, the way I did things is not the model of the way you should do stuff. Okay. Like, I was not what you call an AIS student, which is called ass in seat. Yeah, not so much. So I had to take an art class. I have no, fine art talent in really any. I can't even do arts and crafts, much less, but that's cool. So I took an art history class. Well, of course, I didn't read the catalog, because apparently that wasn't my thing. So it was art history through a feminist lens, which, wasn't really quite what I thought it was going to be. First of all, I didn't know that at all. And so my thing was, to take a contemporary lens, and to look at Degas, or who really did love women, and decide that he hated women and he was an abuser. And I had a hard time with that. And so for my final project, I did a project on bark biting and how to the Native person, art wasn't art like it is in the Western sense. And I think I got a C, which I was fine with. I might have gotten a B. I had to have gotten a B because I had a really good grade point. Yeah. But she didn't really like it at all. But I just couldn't bring myself to do it the way that she wanted me to do it. And I thought my way was more interesting anyway. Even, about art and Native people, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. There's men ledger artists, there's women ledger artists. It's what creator gifts people. And I'm sorry, I have no idea. The light is changing a lot over here.
You're okay.
That creator gifts people what creator thinks that the artist or the person needs and what society needs. So whether it's music or, any sort of art, and that it's about life. It's not about, being an impressionist or whatever. And so, yeah, I definitely wasn't her favorite student. But I rarely went either. You can miss 3 classes, and I missed all 3, believe me. That was pretty bad. Are we getting close to the end?
I think we are. So let's finish with a message that you would like to share and leave everyone with before we close this off today.
My message is that we're all scholars. And it doesn't matter if you know how to take an engine apart piece by piece and put it back together. That takes scientific, mechanical thinking. Or if you're like me and wrote a book, we're all scholars. We all belong. We can all learn. And that to advocate for yourself, and to find those people that are trustworthy, fellow students, professors that you can be honest with, they can be honest with you, because it'll just make a huge difference in, your journey of learning, but that everybody belongs. There is that one person that doesn't belong in learning, and messages that you like. I'll share really quick. My mother, who was very proud of me, very, very proud of me, and always told me I could do anything. I could do this, my adopted Norwegian mother. When I told her that I was getting a PhD in psychology, in philosophy, she was a little competitive. She said, "Really? I wouldn't have thought of that for you." And I was like, "Thanks." I guess I could get a PhD in humor. I was just like, good God. Luckily, I knew where I belonged myself, but I'm sure she didn't quite mean it that way. But even my husband's like, well, that was weird. So, and of course, she was
like, more competition. You're going to compete against me? What?
Well, and she was so lovely, but she would actually say things like, well, I didn't get a PhD. I'm like, I know. I know. You could have. And so, but that's just humanness. And, I know she was incredibly proud of me and happy when she got to say that she had a doctor that was a doctor. So, yeah.
I love it.
Well, it's so good to see your beautiful face, and I'm so happy for you. All the wonderful things that are going on in your life.
Thank you.
You deserve every single thing. We often have hard walks, and I'm just really proud of you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It has not been an easy walk, but it gets better. And, that's the resilience, I think, that, like, especially as natives, that we have, is just, we
Yeah,
just got to keep going. And I always remember, like, my ancestors' prayers, that, their prayers carry me today. They carry all of us
absolutely.
today. And so
Absolutely.
and then I remember their hardships and the things that they went
Yeah.
through. And then I remember our veterans and our service members and
Yes.
the things that they're going through. And then I look at myself and I'm like, all right, Rachel, like, just warrior up,
Yep.
warrior up,
I
keep
tell
going.
myself, buck up, buck up. I want to share with you something that an elder shared with me when I went home. I was fortunate to go home quite a bit during my dissertation to meet with elders, to ask them to pray with me. And they knew my family story, which is rough. Uh, and, but one of the women who I just so love and respect looked at me and said this, and I'll say this to you: you're doing great. Your eyes are clear.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. You're welcome.
I enjoyed having you on here with me today, and keep up the amazing work that you're doing.
Oh, thank
And
you.
like one of the ladies over here, she says, "You're not old, you're just young spirit."
That's right.
So thank you, Emma. So keep being that young spirit and shining, and showing everyone that it doesn't matter how old you are. You can still
Absolutely.
get your PhD at 60 years old. You don't have to be in your 30s or your 20s and
Absolutely.
fresh out of high school. So just keep going and shining and warrior up. And
Exactly. Thank you so much, darling. See you
thank you.
soon. All right.
And we'll see
Bye-bye.
you soon. Okay. Bye.